There was a time when Anthony barely had anything to his name, no money, no home, and no direction. He sat on the edge of a crumbling sidewalk staring at the street as cars rushed past him, each one carrying people who probably had a place to go. Unlike him, he had lost it all in a matter of months, and now the city that once felt like an opportunity felt like a giant wall he could never climb. He had not always been this way. There was a time when he had a decent job, a small apartment, and dreams that stretched far beyond what his bank account could afford. He worked as a mid-level technician fixing software issues for a company that barely noticed him, but he liked the routine. He liked knowing he could buy coffee in the morning and pay his bills by the end of the month. Things started falling apart when the company downsized. A cold meeting in a bright room ended with a letter in his hand and a knot in his stomach. He thought he would find a new job quickly. He applied everywhere, sent emails, knocked on doors, followed up, but nothing came back. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. The money in his savings account thinned out, and so did his hope. His landlord gave him 2 chances and then a final notice. The day he was evicted was the day he realized just how fragile everything in his life had been. He packed his few belongings in a torn duffel bag and wandered through the city searching for shelter, places to sleep, and food to eat. Some nights he camped in abandoned buildings, other nights he found a spot near the park bench behind the library. He was invisible to most people. They walked past him, some with pity, some with judgment, but none with a real offer of help. Every day was survival. Every night was colder than the last. One evening, as he sat near a convenience store hoping someone might spare $1 or $2, a man walked up to him and offered him a sandwich. No words, no judgment, just a warm sandwich. Anthony took it with hesitation and mumbled a thank you. The man sat next to him for a moment and simply said, "I used to sit right where you are." Anthony looked at him, unsure what he meant. The man introduced himself as Malcolm and began to share how 5 years ago he had also lost everything after a business failure and a nasty divorce. He had lived on the streets, fought through addiction and shame, and somehow turned his life around. Malcolm told Anthony that there was a shelter on 9th Street that ran workshops and job readiness programs. They didn't ask many questions and they helped people get back on their feet. If Anthony was willing to show up, they'd give him a chance to learn something new and maybe even land a job. Anthony hesitated, but something in Malcolm's voice made him want to try. The next morning he found the shelter just as Malcolm described it. It was crowded, noisy, and filled with people who all looked like they'd been through storms of their own, but the staff was kind, and the first workshop he attended talked about basic skills and entrepreneurship. At first Anthony didn't believe in the idea that he could start anything, not when he didn't even have a change of clothes, but he listened every day, sat in the front, asked questions. He learned about budgeting, online freelancing, building a portfolio, using social media to sell skills, and more. They taught him how to set up an email, a LinkedIn profile, and even how to present himself confidently during interviews. It felt ridiculous at first, but little by little something in him started to change. One of the mentors noticed how fast Anthony picked up tech concepts and asked if he ever thought of working in web development. Anthony admitted he had dabbled with coding during his previous job but never took it seriously. The mentor challenged him to complete a simple website project for the shelter, and when Anthony delivered it, the staff was amazed that one project turned into 2, then into 3, and soon the shelter helped him buy a used laptop so he could continue building more projects and a portfolio. As his confidence grew, so did his hunger to rebuild everything he had lost and more. As weeks passed, Anthony's skills grew. He spent every spare moment studying coding tutorials online, building websites, and trying to learn new things that might make him stand out in the tech world. Every night, after finishing his work at the shelter, he would sit with his laptop, tweaking code and refining designs, unsure of where it would all lead. The shelter was a temporary fix, a safe space to keep his mind from wandering into darker places, but Anthony was determined not to stay there forever. He couldn't. He knew that if he didn't take a risk now, he would stay stuck in the cycle he had been in for far too long. One day, a breakthrough came when Anthony was working on a website for a local small business owner. The owner was impressed with the website Anthony had built, and the conversation shifted from simple design tweaks to a potential partnership. "I know some people who could use a website like this," the business owner said, "and if you keep this up, I could introduce you to them." That small connection sparked something in Anthony. What started as a simple job for food and a place to sleep began to grow into something bigger. The introductions led to more clients, some willing to pay him decent amounts for his work. Anthony had never thought he could make money from coding. It was just a way to get by, a distraction from his struggles. But now it was becoming his ticket out of the streets, out of the life he'd left behind. His income wasn't much, but it was enough to keep him moving forward. It wasn't long before he decided he had enough to move into a small apartment. The idea of getting his own place felt surreal at first. For months, his life had been defined by survival: no home, no privacy, no control. Now, he had a chance to own something again, something that wasn't a worn-out backpack or an old jacket. With his first small paycheck, he rented a tiny studio apartment on the outskirts of the city, just enough space for a bed, a desk, and his laptop. He didn't need anything more. As his life slowly started to stabilize, the fear of returning to where he once was never fully left him. Every night, he checked his bank balance, counted his savings, and felt his stomach twist in anxiety. He had learned to never take anything for granted. Every day, he worked hard to build his reputation, to refine his skills, and to prove to himself that he wasn't just another statistic. The business owner who had introduced him to new clients eventually became a mentor, guiding him through the process of managing clients, setting prices, and negotiating contracts. With his new mentor's help, Anthony learned to take his skills to the next level. He no longer just built websites, he started developing entire digital solutions for small businesses, focusing on increasing their online presence and helping them grow. Despite the progress, the fear of failure continued to haunt him. He knew that it would take more than just hard work to succeed. It would take courage, persistence, and a willingness to fail over and over again before reaching the breakthrough he dreamed of. There were days when he felt like he was just one mistake away from losing everything again, but he pushed through. He couldn't afford to stop. One of the most defining moments in his journey came when he decided to scale up his business. For months, he had worked alone, managing all the clients and handling every project by himself. But he was no longer a one-man show. He realized that in order to truly succeed, he would need a team, people who shared his vision and determination to build something bigger. Hiring his first employee was a huge risk, but it was also a necessary one. Anthony needed help if he was going to keep up with the growing demand for his services. He posted a job listing online, unsure of what kind of people would apply. When the applications started coming in, he sifted through them carefully, looking for someone who not only had the technical skills but also had the drive and determination that Anthony had developed over the years. He hired a young programmer named Sarah, who had just graduated from college and was eager to gain real-world experience. Together, they tackled larger projects, building websites and digital solutions for small businesses across the city. The work came fast and furious, but with Sarah's help, they managed to stay on top of it all. But despite the success, there were still moments of doubt. Anthony's mind would wander back to the days when he had nothing, when he had slept on park benches, when he had fought for scraps of food, when his future seemed uncertain at best. Sometimes, when things were going well, he would catch himself thinking it was all too good to be true. Yet, every time that doubt crept in, he reminded himself of how far he had come. He had taken the chance when it seemed impossible, he had rebuilt his life from the ground up, and he had earned every single step of his success. He was no longer the man who had lost everything. He was someone who had learned to rise from the ashes and create something that would last. The year flew by, and with it came rapid change. Anthony's reputation in the tech world began to solidify. His small business, once just a side project, was now turning into something much larger. He had a steady stream of clients, a growing team, and more opportunities than he ever could have imagined. His focus had shifted from merely surviving to thriving, and he started to dream again. Not the small, cautious dreams of someone trying to scrape by, but the kind of dreams that kept him awake at night, thinking about what else he could achieve if he just kept going. It was during one of these late-night sessions that Anthony received a call from an investor who had heard about his business. The investor was looking for startups to back, and after researching Anthony's company and its success, they were impressed. They offered him a deal that would give him the financial support he needed to expand even further, but it came with strings attached. They wanted equity in his company and a say in how it was run. It was a huge decision, one that Anthony had never expected to face. The choice between maintaining full control over his business or taking the chance to grow faster and smarter with outside help was not easy. For days, Anthony debated the offer. On one hand, the money could fuel his ambitions. He could hire more employees, build bigger systems, and take on larger projects that would establish his company as a major player in the digital solutions industry. On the other hand, he had fought so hard to be independent, to control his own fate. He didn't want to lose the freedom he had fought for when everything else had been taken from him. He remembered the long nights when he didn't know where his next meal would come from, the fear that gripped him every time his phone rang with an unknown number, and the countless times he had been told that his dreams were too big for someone like him. But in the end, it wasn't the fear that made his decision. It was the opportunity to push beyond the limits he had set for himself. The fear would always be there, but it was no longer enough to hold him back. He took the investor's offer. With the new funding, Anthony's company expanded quickly. He hired more developers, marketers, and designers, and they began to build the systems and software that would redefine how small businesses connected with their customers. Their client base grew exponentially, and Anthony's name became synonymous with success. The man who had once been on the brink of homelessness was now in boardrooms with some of the most influential figures in the business world. The man who had sat on a park bench begging for a sandwich was now shaking hands with investors, signing contracts worth millions. As the company grew, Anthony remained grounded. He made sure to remember where he came from and who had helped him along the way. He continued to meet with the staff at the shelter, offering them opportunities to intern or work at his company, always giving back to the community that had helped him survive his darkest days. He knew that without the people who had believed in him when he had nothing, none of this would have been possible. The transformation wasn't just about money or success. It was about redefining who he was. He wasn't the same person who had wandered the streets, lost and broken. He was now someone who had not only rebuilt his own life but had helped others do the same. His company became a symbol of hope, a testament to what was possible if you refused to give up on yourself. One afternoon, as Anthony stood in his newly renovated office overlooking the city, he reflected on how far he had come. His thoughts drifted back to those long nights of desperation when he had thought there was no way out. He thought about Malcolm, the man who had shared his sandwich with him, and how that simple act of kindness had set him on a path to success. Without that moment, without that encouragement, Anthony wasn't sure if he would have found the strength to keep going. But now, he was in a position to do the same for others, to offer a hand to those who were struggling, to show them that it was possible to rise from the ashes and rebuild everything. It was an overwhelming feeling, the realization that he had done it, that he had turned his life around in ways he had never thought possible. He wasn't just a survivor anymore, he was a true success story. But even then, he knew that success wasn't a final destination. It was a journey. And he was just getting started. With the company continuing to grow, new doors opened up for him every day. He was invited to speak at conferences, write books, and mentor young entrepreneurs. His story became a beacon of hope for anyone who had ever felt lost or defeated, showing them that no matter how far you've fallen, it's possible to get back up. And Anthony didn't plan on stopping. There were more people to help, more lives to change, and more dreams to chase. The man who had lost everything now owned millions. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about the freedom to dream bigger, to help others do the same, and to remind the world that no matter where you start, you can always rise higher.